What do we know about I see it here. Class at Willow Springs Church of Christ this morning. We're happy that you're here. This particular lesson we're going to be in Romans. And I read it and I studied it and I worked on it and I don't know any more now than I did when I started. Kathy, what did you? Kathy wants you to know that there are cards being circulated. If you would sign those and get them back to her sometime before the day is over. I don't usually go through the sick list. I was going to ask Ed about Jan specifically, but he's going down the hall, so we'll talk about that later. If anyone has anything on the people that are ill, the so-called sick list that you want to mention specifically, right now would be the time to do that. But I don't have anything other than.
Ed just said that Jan's not doing well at all. Her surgery went well, but she's still in ICU.
Okay, Jan's surgery went well, but her recovery is not going as liked, and she's still in intensive care unit. She had some stents, didn't she? Is that right? One or more? Anyway, some cardiac stents. We may get more from Ed here in a minute. One of
Barbara Reed. She's having surgery Monday.
This Monday. Barbara Reed is having surgery Monday. We'll go over all this again in our regular service so that everybody catches up on it. Barbara's going to have surgery Monday at Cox or anyway in the Springfield Hospital, and I didn't know till last week that they are back in Springfield. So to me, that's a good thing. I don't know what other people think. Ed, can you bring us up to speed on Jan? Is there anything we need to know specifically?
She's not doing good.
Still in intensive care?
Yep. Her surgery went perfectly, but the recovery's been one disaster.
Okay. All right. We'll
It's
keep.
not her usual joyful self.
Say, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
She's not her usual joyful self anymore, and that's what worries me.
Oh. Is she, in intensive care, she can get cards but no visitors, or how would that work?
I think she could have one visitor at a time. But it's just a long story.
Okay. At any rate, she needs our prayer. We'll end with that. One other thing, after our singing, which was a great success, Kathy Weaver is missing her Bible.
She got it.
Kathy Weaver has found her Bible. Our lesson will be in Romans, chapter 9. We'll actually start with verse 19. I'll tell you, I've read this thing and I've read this thing and I struggle with it. You never, when you're getting ready to teach a class, stand up and tell the people, I'm going to be poor at this because I don't really know what I'm doing, but I'm going to be poor at this, and I'm not very, I'm poorly prepared. What I'm going to do is I'm going to read 2 or 3 verses before we get to 19 to bring us up to where we are, and then we'll start. I'll have Ed, would you ask a short prayer before we do start this for us, to start our service?
Most gracious Heavenly Father, thank you for this beautiful day, especially the opportunity to gather here and study your word and worship. Father, we pray that you be with all those that are sick and cannot be here. Bless them and bring them back to the job to be thy will. Be with the teachers this morning as they learn the lessons. Be with us that we might have open hearts. Allow your word to be planted there and nourish it. Use it to bring others to you. Thank you for Christ, especially his sacrifice. In his name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Ed. Where is Maureen this morning?
They normally don't make it to church. They normally don't make it to Bible study. It takes a little longer to get around.
Okay. I was leaning on her to help me. Chapter 9, I'll read 16. So then, it is not of him that willeth, nor of him that runneth, but of God that sheweth mercy. For the Scripture saith unto Pharaoh, even for this same purpose have I raised thee up, that I might shew my power in thee, and that my name might be declared throughout all the earth. Therefore hath he mercy on whom he will have mercy, and who he will he hardeneth. I'm going to read now then the rest of this chapter. I'm going to read 19 all the way through 33. If you want, you can follow along. Sometimes when people read, I don't follow along. I just try and sit and think about what the reader is reading. Sometimes it works better for me that way. Sometimes the other way. And then after I read this, I'm going to read a synopsis that I've written down here of what I've read. And my purpose in that is to try and condense the Scripture down into what I would consider layman's language. And after I do that, I'm going to open the floor and hopefully get a lot of debate from guys like Bob Reed and Mary Williams and all those people that will step up and help me out. Okay, let's read. 9:19. Thou wilt say then unto me, why doth he yet find fault? For who hath resisted his will? Nay, but, O man, who art thou that repliest against God? Shall the thing formed say to him that formed it, why hast thou made me thus? Hath not the potter power over the clay, of the same lump to make one vessel unto honor and another unto dishonor? What if God, wanting to shew his wrath and to make his power known, endured with much long suffering the vessels of wrath fitted to destruction, and that he might make known the riches of his glory on the vessels of mercy, which he had before prepared unto glory? 24. Even us, whom he hath called, not of the Jews only, but also of the Gentiles. As he saith also in Osee, I will call them my people, which were not my people, and her beloved, which was not beloved. And it shall come to pass that in the place where it was said unto them, Ye are not my people, there shall they be called the sons of the living God. 27. Isaiah also crieth concerning Israel, though the number of the children of Israel be as the sand of the sea, a remnant shall be saved. For he will finish the work and cut it short in righteousness, because a short work will the Lord make upon the earth. And as Isaiah said before, except the Lord of Sabaoth had left us a seed, we had been as Sodomah, and been made like unto Gomorrah. What shall we say then? That the Gentiles, which followed not after righteousness, have attained to righteousness, even the righteousness which is of faith. But Israel, which followed after the law of righteousness, hath not attained to the law of righteousness. Why? Because they sought it not by faith, but as that were the works of the law, where they stumbled at that stumbling stone. As it is written, Behold, I lay in Sion a stumbling stone and rock of offense, and whosoever believeth on him shall not be ashamed. Now I'm going to read what I roughly drew up as a synopsis, and then I'm going to open the floor, and hopefully somebody will have questions and we can talk about those questions. Starting with 19, and this won't be by verse, this will be from 19 through 33. Why are you complaining who has resisted your will? Why are you complaining about the way you've been made? Can you not make the man you want him to be? Can God not entirely make his glory known? And he took both Jews and Gentiles and called him his people. And those that were called not my people, but you are the sons of the living God. He saith, children of Israel be as sands of the seas, but only a remnant will be saved. And the Lord will make short work of all this. And if the Lord had not left us a seed, we would be like Sodom and Gomorrah. And the Gentiles who followed not after righteousness got to righteousness through their faith. But Israel, who followed the law of righteousness, didn't get to righteousness because they sought it not by faith. They didn't use their faith because it were the works of the law, and they stumbled at that stumbling stone. Comments? What say you? I didn't hear any of that.
The stumbling stone you're mentioning was cross. That was what kept them.
In 32,
I can't see the verse that's the last part, but when it's quoting Isaiah.
why? Because they sought it not by faith, but as it were the works of the law, where they stumbled at that stumbling stone.
Right, and it has a quote from Isaiah, I believe. That is the
What?
passage.
I think what I get out of this probably is that they lived by the law of righteousness, and they lived by that law and they practiced it, but they didn't have faith. So they still didn't get to where they wanted to go, even though they were living by the law. And the Gentiles, who didn't live as much by the law, but they had faith, so they got there. So I think what we can go back to is here that the one thing that we as Christians have to have, and we've talked about this before, not in this lesson. The one thing that we have to have faith. And without faith, what are we doing here? Are we just coming here to enjoy each other's company and fill the pews? And does anyone here disagree with that? Frank, you're shaking your head.
The same thing is if you give to the church. You give some money, coins, currency. If you don't want to give, God don't want. If you feel forced
said that, God doesn't need or want your presence here as much as he needs or wants your faith. That you could not attend here, and is that all right, John? Can you hear that okay? That you could not be here, but if your faith was strong, that means much more to the Lord than your attendance. Is that right? Roughly? Maybe? No? Did you hear me, Frank?
Oh, it's a blessing. But yeah, you got to have faith, of course. But it's part of serving, believing. If you're coming here because you're forced, you think you have to, then God don't want your presence. But yes, faith is important. But same as if you give, like I said, if you think you got to do it because you're forced, then God doesn't want it. But yes, you have to have faith, and you want to do it and love. So like you said, if you're coming here to make friendship, that's not the idea.
Okay, thank you. Can you help me out here, Charlie? Wait a minute, Kathy. Kathy's going to help you. Thank you.
Well, I have a study guide that Becky and I think you need to read this. It's really good. It's 1933, if you would like.
No, read it.
Like Johnny's dad.
Yeah.
Do what?
Johnny Skaggs wrote it. Because 1933 is very good.
Okay. Is this yours?
Yes.
Let me just read it aloud. This is what I like. Do not dispute God's methods. This is 19 through 33, a study guide, which encompasses exactly what we're doing. First few verses of the section remind me of the discussion between God and Job. In verse 19, Paul raised the question that the Jews would ask, why doth he yet find fault? The question is really, if God is going to carry out his will regardless of what we do, then why doth he yet find fault? Paul answers this question in verses 20 through 24. In verses 20 through 21, Paul shows that man has no right to bring God into question as to what or as to how he does a certain thing. Such things are in the hands of God, and there they should remain. We ought to be able to understand this point. If we had the ability to create something, we would feel the same way. When a person fashions a piece of pottery from clay, it is within the person's power to shape the pottery into any form he desires, and there is not one thing that the clay can do about it. The same is true regarding God and his creation. How dare we question that which God does? 22, we see that God is indeed a long-suffering God. God waited or was long-suffering through the many years of both Jew and Gentile, perhaps here referring to the Jew, and referring to those who were fitted to destruction or ready for destruction. Paul says that God was long-suffering toward them. They deserved to be destroyed, but because of God's mercy, they were being used for a greater need. It should be noted that their being fitted for destruction was not due to God's desire, but rather it was because of their own sins. The need is thus stated in 23, that he might make known the riches of his glory. This was accomplished through those chosen people who were the children of Israel, or the Jews, who were afore prepared unto glory. However, it was to be done in the fullness of time. This promise was to be made known to the vessels of mercy, which would include the Gentiles. In 24 and 25, Paul quotes from the prophet Hosea. Hosea chapter 1, verse 10. Paul makes it clear to the Jews that God had promised that the Gentiles would be blessed by God, and they would be called the sons of the living God. The reason that this would take place is because the chosen people would reject God as the Jews had done so often. It should come as no surprise to the Jews that God had rejected them. Even their own prophets had prophesied this. And why not? The Jews had rejected God. Now God, who had been so long-suffering, would reject them as a whole. It was speaking of the church, which was established on the day of Pentecost. Only a remnant of the children of Israel remained true to God. Furthermore, Paul explains to the Jews that it had not been for the fact that the seed was promised through them, God would have already given them over to the ways of sin. They would have met their end as did the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah. The only reason they were saved to this point was because the Christ was to come through them. Now Paul turns his attention to the state of those in the church, both Jews and Gentiles. The Gentiles, through an obedient faith, had attained righteousness and had been translated into the kingdom of God. The Jews, who had the law and had the chance to obtain righteousness, did not do so because they sought to obtain it by the works of the law and not by faith. The Jews, according to 32, stumbled at that stumbling stone. This refers to their rejection of Christ. In 33, Paul quotes Isaiah. Some would reject the Christ who was the stone. Others would receive him and not be ashamed of him. This they would do through an obedient faith. That's what I said. Do what? Comments? Help me out here.
We can rejoice in God's long suffering and the fact that He had a plan to save everyone.
Yeah, I'm out of air. I don't know what to do. You know, it's like a guy that's on a radio announcer, and they say the worst thing that a radio announcer can do is dead air. Well, I'm not going to be a radio announcer. That's pretty obvious, isn't it? I don't want to start out. Well, I don't want to start out on 10. But I didn't. Go ahead, sir.
Go back up to where you started, verse 16, 17, talking about Pharaoh. Always had my whole life. Pharaoh's a bad man. He's a bad ruler. He's a bad king. But you know, God created everything and everybody. Causes me to parallel that with where we're living today and this time we're living in today. And we look at our so-called people that are leading or whatever. We think, oh, this is terrible. Morality is going to the dogs and da-da-da. But it says right there that He created Pharaoh for a reason.
Right.
It
Correct.
causes us to turn to God and to realize what He has done. And it maybe takes a person like Pharaoh to cause me to stop and think, wow, we're not all that bad yet.
Correct.
We better pay attention to where we're going, how we're getting there.
It said, correct. It says right in the verse that He gave him that power, or gave him the authority that he had to show His power over people. That's pretty plain. So I guess you make a bad guy to show the world what a bad guy is, and to turn away from that.
We don't want that way. We don't want what a bad person is. We know for sure what it's like, and we don't want to follow someone like that.
Thank you.
He was like the clay. The example that he gives later, Paul in that, again, that vessel wants it to hold. He wants it to hold sugar. You know, he puts it in a bowl that got holes in it where it leaks out. That's his business. You know, we're not to question that. It's the same way with us. You know, we will, and I guess I'm one that does that. I've heard myself say, well, why did God create that guy? Idi Amin is one of my favorite characters, and by that I mean he's the sorriest guy, in my opinion, there ever was. Why did God create him? I think the same reason he created Pharaoh. So that the good, those that have a good spirit, that are Christian, follow God, through that faith, know that they're going to overcome that evil. That whatever it's going to be is going to be set up. They can overcome that.
You know, in today's time, we as Christians and followers of the faith, I think to some degree we have to wake up every morning and search our soul and search our faith again. Because we have to have something, if we look about ourselves in the world today, we here are so fortunate that as we look at the world in general, and as we look at our nation and the other countries, and look at culture worldwide, we can see that things are going the wrong way. And it's incumbent on our faith every morning to reinvigorate ourselves, I think, through our faith, because if you didn't, if you just got up and saw what was going on and you did not have that faith, we'd be in trouble. I think individually, if you didn't have faith in the things that are occurring, would get you down after a while. You have to believe that things are going to get better, and you have to believe that through prayer that you can help. Times are kind of rough right now, and that's just, we're in the United States and we've got the best it's ever been. Things are really rough on the globe and other places we've talked about before. You know, you couldn't even, if you had assembled under Idi Amin to worship the Lord, you wouldn't enjoy fried chicken for lunch, but you wouldn't be here. I saw a guy a while back on, I don't know, he was a PhD or something. He was on television. And he said that our problem, that the United States problem was, we haven't suffered enough. I think he may be right. I don't want to suffer more. I'd like to think that I know the difference and I'm doing the right thing. But we look at a younger generation